We were a little bit worried about getting a quorum, and then when I read Noah's email, I thought, oh, it's gonna be close, but we did it. Robin is at a funeral and won't be here today. Claire basically told us last month that she was going to probably not be here. And of course, we're missing a member. So the meeting is called to order. The next thing on the agenda is to approve the agenda for the meeting. I would like to make one change to this agenda. Under committee reports, I would like to add a second committee, and that would be the nominating committee, because they finished their work and they're ready to report out. So if there's no objections, I need a motion to approve that change and then to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda with that addition.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Public discussion. We were anticipating some, but it's not here. Okay, next on the agenda is the strategic planning update. Assuming else we're just going to leave that.
Yeah, so this is the second of the sort of interim updates that we decided to try. Last year, we talked about keeping the strategic plan sort of more front of mind. Like last time for the quarter update, I just highlighted three things that I felt like sort of stood out as things that might be good for folks to know about before the final report. They're both, none of them should be surprising. I think we've mentioned all of them in some report along the way, but thought it'd be a good time to just package them with the plan and show where they'll be showing up. If anybody has questions, happy to talk about it.
When does this wrap up?
So we have one more year.
One more year, so like June of 2023.
Yes.
So when does it start? You probably are already thinking about the next one, I
So
imagine.
we have some resources allocated to do something very, very preliminary this fiscal year. So we're going to look at possibly doing a very small scope community survey with a couple questions or things to sort of get some handle on what we're going to talk about. Then at the start of the next fiscal year, we'll work on identifying a consultant, assuming the board agrees with that process. We do have some money in the operational budget next year to work with a consultant. And we could also work this fiscal year on putting together like the RFP. We'll be ready to kick that off right when the fiscal year changes. I think that we'll want to give ourselves ample time. We had sort of a bridge plan this last time to get us up and out of COVID, which I think worked well. I'm happy with how it serviced us, but I think we're probably ready for a little bit more traditional plan with I kind of like the idea of a local consultant who can come in and out as we might need them or want them to do check-ins with us as we move through it.
How would you do the community survey? Would that be like something on the website?
I think we'd work with a firm to see, honestly, I think we'd start with what can we afford to do with the resources that we put aside and then decide, would that help us with the story that we're trying to hear? And if not, then we might do it more in-house and do a website based or a walk in the door tally or something like that. But I think what would be kind of interesting would be to work out just a couple of preliminary questions and be able to include those in the RFP and sort of say, we have this information as an example of how you do your work. Talk to us about how you might use this in planning. We know that there are some big issues that staff would like to know more about community response to. And I would say examples of that are operational hours and looking at outreach, whether we're reaching who we want to reach, where we want to reach them, and how we sort of use our overall staff resources to meet those needs outside the library. But we haven't done any concrete work to put that plan together yet.
Anyone else? No? All right. Next is the policy review, the collection development policy. I assume Anne wrote this up, right? And go ahead.
I was gonna say, this was normally scheduled to be in November 2022. I think I will bring it up again. We just wanted to put this. We've been working really hard on training the staff for intellectual freedom issues. This kind of came up right in the middle of while we were planning for that training. That didn't happen in March. It was happened just at the end of February. It came to light that hoopla in there having just this vast over 1 million titles that they have been just working with publishers and grabbing whatever was available, and they don't really have a collections plan. Some items got on there that were all custom and all our fascist propaganda. They were removed within a few days of being identified by a couple of groups. So during that whole process, we didn't really have any control of whether or not those things were on in the collection. And even if they weren't there when we added, but they could be added any time. 2, they were removed really quickly without any oversight from any input from public libraries. And so the idea is just to put something in the collection plan that says we might have these collections, but we don't really have any control on them or what's to go.
And you don't necessarily know when something's been added to.
Right. And it's 1 million titles. And it's not, you can, if you know what you're looking for on there, you can remove specific things, but you'd have to know exactly what you're looking for. And then you have to tell them why you removed it.
Because that was my question, because I read this News Plus article, and it did say we give librarians the tools to remove any titles that they want.
Yeah,
I
it's
didn't
like
know you could do
deep
that.
back end. We're gonna discover, yeah. But you'd have to know exactly what you were looking for, and to know what you were exactly looking for, you'd have to use you'd have to search for them. And
So, but if a patron came to you and said, this is a horrible racist thing that's on there, and they told you the title, you could be ready.
you could theoretically remove it, but
in our policy, we probably wouldn't.
Right, that's
Right.
true.
yeah.
But we may never.
But in our
might
policy,
have
we
never
wouldn't have
collected it.
chosen it, yeah.
Because it wouldn't have met the criteria for purchase. Yeah, it's
It's intractable.
every single part of the way I was not happy.
So the American Library Association is drafting resolutions just to put political pressure on these groups that they have customer library committees. So that somebody that has some experience with collection development, the process and metrics by which we make those decisions involved in some way. We don't know whether that will move the needle, but we're trying.
The difference with Overdrive is we do choose what's on our Overdrive site, but can't be. It's just a big aggregator software.
And you can, if you ever, just do like a regular search, like I'm doing a story time tomorrow and I wanted a digital book and I just typed in spring in Overdrive, quality, fantastic books. In Hoopla, there's some good ones, but then as it just kind of trickles down, you're like, there's a million titles.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Overdrive is one of those places where we purchase the title and then we have to repurchase it. Okay.
And there was a board recommendation or suggestion that we add a sentence to the way that ICPL was engaged with the aggregator. Tom suggested something like ICPL engages in appropriate ways with aggregators to encourage transparency in aggregators' collections policies. And I think Anne and I agree that that could be very seamlessly incorporated. We feel like we're open to it if that's what the board would like.
I would say it's coming back in November. I don't think it's an emergency by any means.
Before with like EBSCO or ProQuest or any kind of database that has.
See where academic settings pass over public.
Yeah, in academic, there has been some controversies, but they're using that material very differently.
It comes up in the catalog, everything. And does it recommend things?
Well, with our personal catalog, we don't have all of the catalog records for Coupa. We have the 5,000 most popular titles. that are on it. So those are probably not going to show up in our own catalog, but they would. And the reason for that is there's no way for us to download 1 million bibliographic records. So we've chosen to do the route in which that they help us maintain those catalog records on a monthly basis. Accurate and up to date.
You could, but we've been in how much stuff?
Well, we could buy more for the graphic record case in theory, yes. They don't give you notifications of what they take off record file.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
There you are.
looks like then that the only change that's being recommended at this off review time is to add the statement about the aggregated collections. So I need a motion, unless anybody else has more comments. Motion to approve the changes to the collection development policy.
Whoops. Right, my chain fell. Did I screw something up? I don't even know what it did.
Sharing your screen.
And sharing emojis. All right, yeah, it's still recording.
So Dan moved, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to the third quarter statistics and financials. I'm always amazed at how many statistics we keep. Anybody have any comments or questions?
One, but not surprising.
What?
I said it's a weird one, but not surprising. With regards to heating costs and consultancy services, for example.
Trouble spending money.
That's my concern is that this year, if anything, we're gonna end up a little under as a department of the city. I have no guilt really over that. I mean, if there is a year to balance a little high, this is not a bad one. Looking at all the departments across the board. Of course, we also want to use those resources for what we were allocated for. We're going to do some scrambling here the last quarter to try to figure out what things that there's been supply issues can be expedited. I wouldn't be surprised if a few vendors have had enough cancellations that they might come back and say, okay, so we said no to those shelves, but we now have them on the floor ready to go. Like, would you take gray instead of black? And we still have the opportunity, the carryover call from the city has not come yet. So that's an opportunity to say, yeah, we budgeted for this, it was approved, and here's the evidence that we just couldn't get it based on supply issue. I think this is going to be a heavy year for that across the whole city. So we'll spend some time on that, thinking about what expenses fall into that category. Some of the items that we're having the supply chain issues with were budgeted through NOBU, which is a much different situation. That is much more at the board's discretion of whether we do sort of an unofficial rollover with that, or if we want to actually write it into the next budget with a larger number, knowing that we had unspent resource this year, which we have time to talk about. Again, it's not gonna surprise me if we have some sort of last minute things go through or not. The most disappointing this year has been vendors that we know and use regularly saying with confidence, like, here's our cutoff date for this fiscal year, you're good to go, we're gonna invoice. And once we actually send in the confirmation of order, getting a response back saying changed, that's not gonna happen. And it's, you can't blame anybody because it's all the way down the chain, but it's disappointing. We haven't run into anything like mission critical, like we haven't run out of RFID tags or library cards or things that would be difficult to source quickly and locally, but there are some projects that we're still we're just not sure if they're gonna happen or not, but I will keep the board abreast of the carryover timeline as that happens. I'm expecting a time now. It's often not until a little bit farther into the quarter, but because I think there's going to be so many across the city, I wouldn't be surprised if they give a little extra time. So finance has a little bit of leeway to work with that. But otherwise, I felt pleased with where our numbers were falling.
So the reflecting on Angie's report, like the shirts and stuff, is that Nobu money for free for the reading program?
That comes out of operational, right? Or do we use some of both for shirts?
Not any from Nobu, but we use designated gifts and then we use some of our operational budget for it. And in past years, we've used like Vision Iowa. We just
So it might be if they're more expensive this year, it won't be a big problem.
No, and there have been other things. T-shirts are actually a really great example. The price of those are ebbs and flows anyway. And sometimes we budgeted what we thought was enough, but we then have to borrow from another printing line, or even without COVID stuff. Another good example is the cost of the window. That went up 40%.
40%. And it's not necessarily the paper, it's the ink. The ink on the paper is what is like, we did not. Because the summer one comes from Sam's budget and my budget. And
Marketing has quite a large printing budget and so, yeah.
But luckily, because of some other lines being still available, we were able to cover it with sort of an easy-ish internal solution.
Why is ink so expensive? Is it Russian oil?
I'm not sure. We were quite shocked when that came back. And we were scrambling, looking back at, what the window costs, what this costs. 42%.
And I think that especially our local vendors, I really trust that they're not, this is true inflation. It's not, nobody's trying to make a quick dollar off of it. It's just, it makes it harder to make the decisions, and then we're on a tighter timeline. So it all just sort of compounds as an issue. But the other reality is we could be facing another budget next year just like this. We had tried to account for the inflation issues that we knew about many months ago when we were creating the operational budget request. So we'll just have to, like this year, sort of walk through the year, evaluating as we go. If we spend double the amount we planned on this publication, then what do we give up? And in some cases, it works out organically because events are canceled or prices change in the other direction. But it's I will say that having Nobu as a resource is always something we're so thankful for. This kind of budget year, you realize just how much flexibility that gives you. Even if it's just accessing $1,500 for something that otherwise you couldn't find in your operational, it really makes a difference. So.
Also, there's offhand mention of the automatic material handler, which I have completely lost track of. Is it something we are doing, still considering?
I think I'd say we're still considering. There's enough delay in that process that vendors are reluctant to come and do their show for us. So I think what we're going to do is ask the city to allow us to roll that CIP. And once we can get more activity from vendors, we'll make more of a decision. If the city says no, for whatever reason, whether their CIP budget is too tight next year or there are other reasons, it will not make things worse for us. But I'm hoping that they'll let us kind of roll it 1 or 2 more fiscal years so that we can hopefully let that supply catch up and hear more from the vendors. Sam did see a unit or 2 at PLA that seemed like something we want to explore, but probably would not be available in time to fulfill the original timeline. Again, we're not the only department in this position, and when you're talking about something with so many different vendor parts leading into the product.
Try not to take it personally, but I just had somebody finally call me back from PLA and gave me ideas for when we can talk in June. I'm like, all right, sounds like you're busy.
And I think that we will share more information with the board before that purchase was made, certainly. And typically, in the past, what I like to do with that kind of thing is if we have vendors coming in, make those presentations available if board members want to hear about it.
Right.
It's an odd, I mean, unless you've really seen it in action or have a history of libraries, it's kind of a hard thing. How big are they? Where are they? How loud are they? How does it impact other jobs? So those are things that we could walk through. Once
Well,
it's a little more
done
realistic.
some reorganizing that, may impact the decision to purchase or not.
Yes. Yeah, and there are multiple sort of big categories. There's sort of a smart sorter versus a full automatic materials handler. And those are under the same umbrella, but kind of do 2 different jobs. And I think as the jobs in that department have sort of been tightened up, we know more about what we do.
Exterminator back there.
Just call her the exterminator.
Other questions regarding expenditures or the other statistics? Nope.
Okay.
This doesn't require approval, right?
Right.
No. All right, well, gosh, Ellsworth, this was supposed to be a long meeting.
I thought so
Um,
too.
Moving
Here
on,
we are.
Yeah, right.
Careful.
moving on to the reports. Director's report.
I do have a couple things that came up after I wrote this. Jen has hired a new assistant in the admin, a new aide. Do you want to just talk a little about Daniel's background?
Yeah, Daniel is a student at the University of Iowa. He's going to be graduating in 2 weeks from the English program. He's focusing on creative writing. He recently worked at the University of Iowa Hospital and started this week and he's doing a great job.
Seems like he's going to be a really good fit.
Is this a full-time position? Part-time.
Just as an FYI, the building is scheduled to be washed tomorrow, the exterior. Brad had that scheduled for a couple months earlier, but between weather and other events, we've had to postpone it. That should take care of any of the sort of graffiti residue on the building, but more importantly to me, it takes care of that sort of gradient black gunk that comes down onto the limestone. So it should sort of freshen up the facade for summer. It's just how the materials age. There's nothing wrong, but I always like it when those things are done. Just a mention of the board vacancy process. So that obviously is out, that it's open. I asked Stephanie Bowers if she would share the city's diversity posting list, which she did. I've sent out to a number of people on the list that I knew well enough to sort of say, like, here's this, can you get it on your posting? And then Jen and I are going to continue to work with some of the folks who'd be new to us to give a little more context. That position, that vacancy closes on the 10th. It will be in the at the May 17th council meeting, it's scheduled to be appointed, and that packet comes out on the 12th. So the closing on the 10th, it should become available to all of us to see on the 12th, and then that meeting is on the 17th. And in the past, when there's been candidates that I felt like were of specific value because they filled something that might not be visible to outside folks, I've sort of reached out to a particular council member and said, this is something we noticed about the applicants, thanks so much for your attention, just to, not expecting anything to be swayed by that, but just to share what we, if there's a detail that would be especially pertinent to what we're missing currently.
So theoretically, then, the person would be available for the June meeting.
Yep, the bylaws specify
Or
they have
actually,
to
maybe
be,
even the May.
so they have to be oriented according to the bylaws before the first meeting. But I don't know that.
The meeting's the 26th.
Maybe 26. If they have availability, that's, it's
That's
over, it's a
possible.
week and a half before. I would say certainly before the meeting, I would expect to have time to do an orientation, but we can be pretty flexible with when that happens.
Well, if it's
So-
just you and me and the candidate, then I'm flexible the second half of the month.
So I don't think it's, I think it's reasonable to expect that they'd be here in May. And then again, certainty. I did have a question about the June meeting. I'm pretty sure that it falls over ALA. Dates, is that the
Yes.
23rd is,
The week of the 24th?
so the 23rd may be a travel day for some of us who are going to that. If that's the case, I don't know historically if the board has moved its meeting or just had not all coordinators will go, so there would be a coordinator here who could take my place if needed. And we could talk about it offline, Carol, if you'd rather.
Well, I don't personally have a problem with moving the meeting, but I don't want to make that decision on behalf of the entire board. I don't know if you all want to.
Personally, once I get into June, my schedule is pretty wide open, so.
It could be the week later, which I assume will be June 30th. Actually.
That'll be leading into the 4th of July weekend.
I said I was going to be gone, so I actually won't be here on June 23rd either, so.
I'm not, honestly, I'm waiting a little bit to hear if there's any updates on the under 5 vaccine before I decide for sure whether or not I'm gonna go.
Hopefully soon.
But if it's still sort of, we don't know when it's gonna happen, but we're hoping soon, I'll probably go. If there's a definitive date and it's on the horizon, I will probably stay on.
Can we put this on the May agenda?
Yes. Yes. And other than, those are the only things that come up since I submitted the report.
So I guess next up is children's. Well, summer reading should be a lot more fun than last year.
I think so. I'm already buyer's remorse or what it is.
That's a lot of work, isn't it? So
I keep looking, I finally had to take down the first of the week. So after 2 years of not doing that much programming, I keep looking at all the programs that we have coming up. And it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be packed. We kind of started to get our preview. Our children's circulation is still way up. Program members are. The amount of people coming to programs is just incredible. So.
I have a friend who runs a restaurant and she, during the pandemic, she cut her menu way back and made it real basic and everything. She knows she needs to up it now, but she doesn't want to. It's like, I think the pandemic is just, it's sort of like, oh, really, I have to
Just
do
got
that
back to
again?
basics and just kind of did the, and now it's like, oh, it's coming. Very excited.
Okay. Let's see, next is Anne.
Statistics or intellectual freedom training.
School club, it's the circulation or whatever you call it. Was it about what you expected?
No, I mean, I'm pleased. I'm pleased with the reach that it's getting because it is getting more use or more people are using it than Canopy. Canopy did that for a couple of years now. But I am watching the costs.
You spent a lot.
Well, I mean, it is a lot of, that's a lot of money for circulation and it's a different mind frame. Like we have a DVD and we buy it for $15. It goes out 200 times and it's pennies, right? And now we get this multiple dollar amounts. It's a little, it's just a different, I mean, it impacts the budget.
Yeah.
In some cases, it's cheaper than how much the cost per circ is for an overdrive audiobook when we buy it outright for like that 2 year. When it's $80 to $120 an audiobook, if we're only spending $1.99. But
We spend more for more popular things, do we?
yeah, I haven't figured out a rhyme or reason to what they charge. So it can range from 79 cents a cert to $2.99. The audiobooks tend to be a little bit more expensive. The TV shows are a little cheaper. That's a little bit of what I've kind of figured out. But yeah, the pricing is also not upfront. You can find it, and you have to look by title. You have to know what you're looking for.
And with Hoopla, does just selecting the item count as a use, or is there a grace period of seconds or something? Doesn't Canopy have a 15-second or something decision point?
So with Canopy, you press play and then 10 seconds in, it charges the library. With Hoopla, you have to check it out, kind of like Overdrive. You're checking it out and then you can download it. Once you do that checkout, if you've never opened it, never listened to it, you're still charged.
Okay, I guess that's it.
But people are limited, right? 10,
Yeah,
whatever it is. 8.
How many people, how common is it for people to get their limits? Doing that?
Yeah, it's not that many. It's less than 5%. Yeah, it's something we monitor quite a bit in Canopy too. And if we decide to up it, how many people are we impacting? profit back. It wasn't.
Next is IT report. This is probably a dumb question, but I don't know the answer, so I'm gonna ask it. What is an AWE computer? It was removed.
Oh, moved further.
Moved.
They're moved. I was like,
Well, okay.
like, what'd you write? They are all-in-one learning stations. So they are for the under 5 crowd. They're preloaded with games that are educational and fun. They don't go out to the internet.
Oh, okay.
And in the past, our biggest, they used to be like right there with our public internet computers. And not often, but every once in a while, we would have parents who are like concerned that their little kids were playing Sesame Street and a child next to them was playing Minecraft or Roblox, which are internet games and can have a little bit, you know, more developmental appropriate things for a 10-year-old than for a 3-year-old. So this way we, during the pandemic and right before we reopened, we moved our new book collection and then we put these AWEs where the new books used to be. So there's like a wall dividing them now. So they're on one side of the wall, the young kid computers under 5 and the and then it gave us space to add 2 more public computers for the kids because in the summer, it's a lot. We needed them for the, I mean, pre-pandemic numbers showed us that we needed more public computers for the kids.
Great use of space.
Looks very natural.
Well, my kids just ran up to opposite sides. I'm like, yes.
I know, we put a couch over there now and another little kind of toy thing, so parents can sit right there on the couch and watch. Before, there wasn't really a spot for parents to sit and watch their kids on those little AWE computers. It's just a brand name, I guess, too. AWE is just a brand, like a Dell.
All right, any other questions or questions for Brett? Patty is not here today. I went and Tom was there. Robin was there. We went to the volunteer recognition event. Very nice. It was lovely. I was trying to figure out if board members over the course of their 6-year term would end up being 100-year volunteers. I suspect that they, I'm not suggesting that you I'm not calling for that, but anyway.
Special trophy.
And you'd really have to take attendance at all the meetings though, so.
Well, we have to.
We have that.
Okay. Miscellaneous, I don't believe I've ever had a miscellaneous addressed in the meeting, but the president's report, I really don't really have anything other than acknowledging the volunteer event. I did also, Jen sent out, can't remember when, earlier this month, a continuing ed opportunity through the state library called Next in the Boardroom, Facing Crucial Conversations. And that is on Thursday, May 26th, which I believe is our meeting day. It's from 6 to 7:30. It's a webinar. If somebody really wanted, it sounds kind of interesting. Well, this comes from Amazon, so when stakes are high, opinions vary, and emotions run strong, you have 3 choices: avoid a crucial conversation, suffer the consequences, handle the conversation poorly and suffer the consequences, or apply the lessons and strategies of crucial conversations and improve relationships and results. Written in an engaging and witty style, Crucial Conversations is apparently a book, and this webinar talks about that. teaches readers how to be persuasive rather than abrasive. My printer cut part of it off, so I don't know if that actually interests anyone or not, but if it did, I don't know if the people who wanted to sit there through it wanted to, do that at the end of the board meeting from 6 to 7:30, or just figure if people wanted to do it, they could go home and do it. It would be continuing ed. It says there's no requirement or expectation that attendees read the book prior to the program.
But also maybe we have 8 or 9 copies of that book.
Of the book,
So if people are interested.
maybe that would be a more individualized way of addressing it. Have you read it?
We ordered it for the leadership team to read. We haven't added it to the agenda yet.
Afraid of what conversations might ensue. Yeah.
Well, okay, I'm not hearing any, yes, we definitely should do that, so. Just for future reference, that would be possible, right, Fred? To do the webinar here at the end of a board meeting? Okay.
And would that require any of you to stay later
Yeah.
than?
I mean, some of us would be here anyway.
Okay.
I mean, we could turn things off. Can't we? You know how to do it. Just put your-
That's it, yeah.
Don't you like that?
Yeah.
It's a little squishy.
We don't have to report it to anyone, so as many as we do.
They,
I think it's just like, the question is, does your board do continuing education or something?
Right.
yeah, standard number 8, all members of the library board participate in continuing education. Pretty,
More than
yeah, in
0.
service day, I think it does, somewhere it does give a number, like 8 hours or something. If you went to the in-service day and then you learn things from the coordinators who update us, I think we would.
Sort of in that vein, not to interrupt, but if anybody's thinking about submitting a proposal for an ILA program, they're due at the end of the month. So there is a board track. I know that they don't always get as many programs about trustee stuff as they'd like. It's an extremely basic web form, if you'd like to put in an idea, and it's non-binding. So if you have an idea that you weren't sure, if you could throw it in.
Is it in Coralville this year?
So
good.
very convenient.
Okay.
When is it? It's in October, right?
Usually either the first or second.
Okay, announcements from members.
I really liked the way the packet was done this week with the link to the PDF.
Yes,
That was nice.
there's a noticed improvement. I think the summer
I
reading
really
program.
like how consistently I come and pick it up from your office on the weekend.
The summer reading program logo this year is brilliant. I really love it. Yeah, it's just, I want to get it as a patch. Oh, man. I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna be writing the kids to get that t-shirt.
How about ink on t-shirts? Is that expensive?
Oh, gosh.
Oh, no.
The t-shirts are expensive, but they are very beloved by the community. I mean,
Yeah.
when I got here, I did wonder about the expense of them. It seemed like a significant expense, but when people have gone out of their way to tell me my children have them from, they're at university now and they have them going back, we still hold on to them. We made a memory quilt with them. Kids will come in with like these ratty, too tight summer reading t-shirts. So I have embraced them fully. And I like that we source, we work with local vendors. We try to make it as
And this year's are just
This year's theme is good. Sometimes I think this is gonna be a fun one. But people really, they do resonate with a lot of them.
Okay, well, people do like free stuff. Okay, committee reports. Has the Friends Foundation met?
Yes, we met last week. Angie joined us to talk about the summer reading program. They shared information about a new free optional supplemental health insurance coverage for volunteers available through the city. Everyone was encouraged to support the Eat Out to Read next week at Oasis. And which it was in Patty's report as well. We approved nominations for 2 new directors at large and 2 returning members. And they'll be considered again next week, next month at the corporate members meeting. Is that next month? I thought that was in June.
No.
Is it in May?
Actually, it might be in.
Patty says it's in May, so I'll trust her.
President appoints to foundation board, but the corporate. Well, it does say that. It's on May 26th. So,
All right,
there we go.
next month.
Okay, and then the other committee report that we added at the beginning of the meeting is the officer nominating committee report.
So we met virtually as a committee and looked at, Tom very helpfully pulled up the past sort of terms of service, how long our current board member or officers have served. We discussed and it seemed wholly reasonable to ask our current officers to continue in their roles. We reached out individually and they were all amenable. So our nominations are to continue our, is this an action item? We nominate our,
I guess so.
Yes, I don't know, when do we elect? It could be now.
I think in the past we've done it now, yeah. Well, whenever they're announced. Tom just doesn't want to be chairman. Let's put that off another year.
Well, okay, I don't even know if it requires board approval. I guess suppose it does. I need a motion. So, okay, the motion is that Derek will remain as secretary, Tom will remain as vice president, and I will remain as president. So I need a motion to approve that slate of officers for the next fiscal year.
I'll move to do that.
And I need a second.
I'll second. I'll second.
Really finding his role here. Okay, all in favor?
I
All right, motion carries. Communications, there's some articles in the packet. And then the next item that does require board approval is the approving of the consent agenda. The minutes from our last meeting in March and the disbursements.
move to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And then the agenda for the May meeting, we'll add the decision about what date to set for the June meeting to that agenda. Bylaws committee every year?
No,
I was just, I mean, I don't mind that we have a bylaws committee. I just had never, I don't remember it being a part of the.
We checked it, it's like a million.
Sure, is it like a every 3 years thing? Okay,
like I say, we haven't had one since I've been on the board.
So this is the 3-year
So, okay,
Okay, so. good.
so it's just like a policy review.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, if somebody is really wanting to be on that bylaws committee, do let me know, please. Otherwise, I'll just pick someone.
Well, in the past 3 years, a lot of things have come up that you might want to think about, like we're trying to put virtual participation and other things like that.
Mhm.
So it could be an unusually fun time to be on.
Public comment period.
You mean
Just think about
restricting it,
restricting.
right?
And lots of committees we've seen moving it to the end of the agenda or
But the public comment,
moving it to, yeah, or moving it somewhere else. I think that's supposed to help with like filibusters where they just come in and try to take over the whole meeting, but there are pros and cons, obviously.
Sure. Have there ever, I mean, has the library ever experienced issues with public comment or?
Not since I've been here.
Yeah.
you came close, it sounds like, but
I mean, we had someone who used all the time. It was allotted to him, but he finished when he was. But that's something bylaws doesn't really speak to, whether there's a time limit or not, just sort of ad hoc, maybe not.
So infrequent that we have non-staff public comment. I think it's there are benefits and not having it scripted.
It's a good thing to think about though, because you'd hate to make a change reactively.
Absolutely.
right.
Yeah, right. That never looks good. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be easy to look biased.
Does city council have the public participation before, at the front of the meeting or the end of the meeting, to say or not?
Just changed something about it.
I think. I can look it up.
Well, it would be something for the bylaws committee to work on too.
Yeah.
They could contact city council. Okay, so think about it. It might be actually not that bad of a committee to be on. I don't,
Someone that they're-
What you're trying to say is it's super important.
Yeah, right, very valuable.
well,
It's an essential part of how we operate.
it can be, because like you say, a couple things have come up. So when does it report out then? Because that would be a good thing to know before you're on the committee.
July. Is that for you?
Is it July? Oh, okay. There we go. All right. Okay. I'll take care of that. Else? Think of? No? In that case, I will adjourn the meeting. All right.
Carol, no pressure. Send it around. I don't know if people are gonna do individual or nothing.
Do we?